Hey everybody, and welcome to EESW's first Scratch coding tutorial. What Scratch is it's an awesome tool that you can use from your web browser to design and build your own animations and games and share them online. Looking at the homepage here, you can see that there are a whole bunch of projects that are already being shared. In this series of videos, what you're going to be building are games. Our first project is going to be a game that looks a little bit like this. You're going to have a paddle which you can move, a ball that's going to bounce around the screen, and the aim of the game is going to be to keep the ball from hitting the floor down here. It's going to look a little bit like this.
Boing. Boing.
So, let's get started. Alright, so the first thing we're going to need to do is go to the Scratch website, which is scratch.mit.edu. And you're going to see this page here. To get coding, we're going to need to make an account. So you've got to click on Join Scratch. We're going to choose a username and a password. I'm going to hide my password. It's going to ask us what country we live in and what year we're born in. And it's going to ask us our gender. Then we've got to give it our email to verify our account. Now we're ready to get coding. To get building, we're going to go up here and choose Create. This is going to load our project page. Now, we have two areas on our project page. This area on the left-hand side is where we're going to build our code using these blocks here. On the right-hand side, we have what's called the stage. The stage is where your game is going to take shape. On the stage, we have Scratch the cat here. Scratch is called sprite number 1. A sprite is like an actor on the stage, something that you can move around and control. You can change the size, like this. You can change the direction, like that. And you have these values, an X and a Y. Both of those are set to 0, while Scratch is in the middle of our stage. If I move Scratch to the right-hand side, you'll see this X value increase. If I move him to the left-hand side, the X value decreases. If I move him up, Y increases, and down, Y decreases. I'm going to set these both back to 0. Now in our game, we don't want this sprite, so we're going to remove it by clicking down here, and we're going to add a ball and a paddle. The way we do that is going down here to choose a sprite. Now we can draw our own, or we can choose one from the selection. I'm going to choose the basketball here, and I'm going to choose the paddle, which I can find like this. I'm going to put them roughly where I'd like them on the screen. So the paddle we want close to the bottom. So let's say at y minus 150, and right in the middle, x at 0. And the basketball we're going to put in the middle of the screen at 0, 0, like this. Starts, we want this ball to bounce around the screen in every direction. So we're going to write some code to tell it to do that now. We make sure the ball is selected, so we're writing code for the ball. We're going to go down here on the left-hand side to events and take this block here. It says when green flag clicked. The green flag is the button that we press to start the game. So when our game starts, back to motion, let's have the ball move 10 steps. So let's see what that does. The ball moves 10 steps in the direction that it's facing, which is 90 degrees to the right, but it only moves 10 steps each time the green flag is pressed. We want it to start moving and to keep moving. Back to control, we've got a block here called a forever block. Now this block will tell it to move and keep moving. So you see the ball moves, it keeps moving, but it gets stuck on the edge. We need the ball to move and bounce off the edge. Now we can write some code to sense when it touches the edge and to bounce back in the direction it came, but that's already been done for us. In motion, we've got this block here that says if on edge, bounce. Let's put that there and see what happens. Now the ball is moving, it's moving forever, and it's bouncing off the edge. There's one thing missing. It's not bouncing in a random direction, it's just moving in the same direction. So we want it to move in every direction. If I go here in motion, I can see this block, point in direction. Now point in direction 90 is going to point it in the direction it's already going. I can choose any direction from 90 all the way down to 180, and then from all the way back at 179 back to 0. We want to choose a random direction. So I'm going to go here to operators, and I'm going to pick random. I'm going to slot that here. So I wanted to pick a random number from minus 179 all the way up to 180. Let's see what that does. Okay, the ball is moving in a different direction each time we start the game, and it's bouncing off the edge. You'll notice that when I start the game, the ball starts from the same position it stopped. We want it to start from the center each time the game begins. So, if I go back to motion here, I can tell it go to X position and Y position. Now those are 23 and 149 because that's where the ball is right now. We want it to start at 0, 0. Each time I press the start button, the ball starts in the middle and it moves in a random direction, bouncing off the edge. Brilliant. Next, we want this paddle to move when we press the left and right arrow. So we're going to click on the paddle and we're going to write some code for that. Events, when the green flag is clicked. And we want it to sense when we press the left and right arrow. The way we're going to do that is by using a control block called an if block. We can say if the right arrow is pressed, move to the right. So in sensing, I've got this block here. If key right arrow is pressed, then, and we're going to use the same motion block, move 10 steps. Let's see what happens. Now, when I press the right arrow, nothing is happening. And the reasons nothing is happening is because it's only looking for if the arrow key is pressed when the green flag is clicked. We need to put a forever block here. Now, we can control the paddle by pressing the right arrow. We need to do the same thing for when we press the left arrow. So I'm going to take another if block, another sensing block, if key left arrow is pressed, and another motion block, move 10 steps. Now we want it to move in the opposite direction, so I'm going to change this to minus 10. Let's have a look and see what happens now. I can move left and I can move right. Each time I start the game, the paddle, like the ball, starts in the place it was last. So I need to tell it, when we start, to go to x0 and y is going to be minus 150 because we want it to be here at the bottom of the screen. Each time I start the game, paddle is starting back in the center. Now, you'll notice that when the paddle touches the ball, nothing happens. So the next thing we need to do is tell the ball that when it touches the paddle, to bounce. The way we're going to do that is we're going to change the code for our ball. We're going to say if the ball touches the paddle, change direction. So down here to control, and we're going to take an if block. We're going to place it inside our forever loop because we want the ball to change direction every time it touches the paddle, not just once. Over to sensing, we have this block here that says touching mouse pointer. If I click mouse pointer, I can go down and change it to paddle and place it in here. If the ball is touching the paddle, then change direction. So there's a couple of ways we can do that. We can use a turn block. What I'd like to use is a point in direction block. Now point in direction 90 means that the ball will point in this direction each time it touches the paddle, which isn't quite what we want. We want it to bounce upwards in a random direction. So let's go back to operators and take another pick random block. The direction we want it to bounce is going to be upwards, so let's say up to 80, all the way to about minus 80. Alright, let's have a look at our code now. The ball hits the paddle and it bounces just the way we want it to in a random direction each time. There's one more thing we want to add here to our if touching paddle block, and that's going to be a score counter. We want the game to count our score and for our score to go up every time the ball bounces off the paddle. So let's go to variables, and we're going to make a variable, and it's going to be called score. You'll notice it appears up here. We don't want it to appear up here, we can uncheck it here, but I think it looks quite good. I think we'd like our score to stay up there. We have options along the side here. Change my variable by 1. Let's change score by 1 every time the ball is touching the paddle. Alright, let's check this out. So you can see the score increasing each time the ball touches the paddle. The only issue here is our score doesn't reset every time we start the game. So we need to tell it to set score to 0 right at the beginning of the game. Okay. Brilliant. We're almost there with all of the functionality for our game. The next thing we need to do is have the game end when the ball touches the bottom edge of our screen here. If we go up to sensing, we can see that we don't actually have an option to sense when the ball touches the bottom edge of the screen. So we're going to need to make the bottom edge ourselves. We're going to create a new sprite that's going to be a nice straight line along the bottom edge. So if I go here to sprite, rather than choose a sprite, we're going to paint one of our own. We're going to paint a line. I'm just going to draw a nice straight line across the screen like that. That line appears on our stage, and we can position it wherever we want, which is down here below the paddle. And we can call it floor. If we go back to our code, we can now say if the ball touches the floor, and up here in control we have an option to stop all. We pop that in here. Let's have a look what happens when the ball touches the floor. And the game stops like that. Now the last thing we want to do is make our game look nice. We're going to add a background. So down here, beside choose a sprite, we also have the option to choose a backdrop. We can choose from a selection like before, like this. So this doesn't look too bad, but when the game ends like this, I'd like the background to change to say game over. So we're going to have to make a new backdrop. This time, like before, rather than choose one, we're going to paint one. I'm going to choose text, I'm going to type game over. like this. Make it nice and big, pop it in the center, and call this background game over. If I look back at my code, we can say if the ball is touching the floor, up to looks, switch backdrop to game over, like this. Let's have a look. Not bad. When I start a new game, our backdrop stays on this game over screen. So we need to add some more code right up here at the top to tell the background to switch to basketball each time the game starts. Let's have a look. So we've got a nice basketball background that switches to game over and then back to basketball when we start again. So there we have it, folks. Well done. You've just made your first game using Scratch. If you'd like to stretch yourself and add a little bit more to your game, you could think about adding sound effects when your ball hits the edges or hits the paddle. You could try make the game get more difficult by increasing the speed of the ball or adding more balls as the score increases. Enjoy yourself, experiment. If you'd like to share your games with us, you can tweet to us at EESWSTEMCymru, and I'll see you for the next one. Take care.